Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new episode of Project LS 400. As you can clearly see, I'm not in the workshop at the moment, nor am I driving the car, but I want to start a new project, or sort of a project, that's to resolve the issue that I have with the hesitation and the stumbling under acceleration. It's been a while since I last made an episode, but that doesn't mean I haven't been working on the car. So let me start off by giving you a recap of what the things I've been doing in the past couple of months and weeks.
So I pulled the car out of winter storage in early March, and one of the first things that I did is that I washed the car because it gotten really dirty. And I was immediately reminded that the car had a water leak. I kind of forgot about that, but before I put the car in winter storage in autumn last year, the car had been sitting outside in the rain and the interior had gotten really wet. The headliner, the carpets, a lot of condensation on the windows. So I knew I had a water leak somewhere, and I suspected it would be on top of the windscreen, because one of the last things that I'd done to the car before I put it back on the road is to resolve a lot of rust issues on the A-pillar on the passenger side and on the leading edge of the roof. The windscreen had been replaced, I knew that, and it had been improperly done, otherwise it wouldn't have that rust, and I suspected there would be a lack of sealant. So what I did, I just reapplied some sealant on the top left corner, so on the driver's side, and put the trim back in, and apparently that solved the problem. That was a real easy fix. After I reinstalled everything, this time I reinstalled the trim straight, I gave the car a power wash and it was watertight, and I don't have any problems with water getting inside the car anymore. So really happy with that. Another thing I did, and I didn't film this on purpose, is I replaced the fuel pump. And well, there are a lot of videos on this subject on how to replace a fuel pump in an LS400. So I didn't film that. Car had been running on LPG for a longer period of time, and that means that the fuel pump doesn't work all that much, so it wouldn't hurt anyway to replace it. So just for my own peace of mind, I replaced that. So that's the two most important things I've done off camera. Back to the episode.
So I'm really happy that the leaking problem is now solved. As you may know, I do not have a garage that I can store the car or part of the car when I'm not using. I currently can't access my workshop. Yeah, that's the way it is. I'm looking for another workshop where I have unlimited access to get in and out in the car and work on my other project cars. But anyway, that's solved. Replacing the fuel pump, yeah, that didn't resolve the hesitation under acceleration issues. That's still there, but there is a minor improvement, I can tell. So it was about time that the fuel pump needed to be replaced. So in this episode I want to address the stumbling and hesitation problem that I have. And I talked to my mechanic and we kind of agreed upon that it could very well be the ECU. As you may know, I did change the capacitors in there, but that didn't solve my problem. But I couldn't see anything at fault in the ECU. However, things are pointing in that direction. Both my mechanic and I have a strong hunch it is the ECU that is at fault. So just to go out and buy a new ECU would set me back at least 1,500 euros, and with shipping it would be about 1,800. And yeah, it's an expensive gamble to make. So what I first want to try is to install a known good ECU and go for a test drive and see if that solves my problem. And for that I need a known good ECU. Yeah, and where to find them? LS400 are pretty hard to come by, and not everyone wants to lend out parts or have me work on the car just to test things in my car. But I found one, and that is what brought me into this beautiful spring weather and beautiful setting over here. Let me turn you around. So that's Project LS400 in the distance, and there's a nice large carport. Lurking under there are some Japanese classics, and there you can see it, my friends. LS400 first gen, it's the same age as mine, almost the same build date, and I want to pick out the ECU of that car, install it in Project LS400 and see if the problem persists. If it goes away, then we know for sure it's the ECU at fault, and then I know what to do. Spend a lot of money. So let's go ahead. I'm not looking forward to do this process twice today, but anyway, what needs to be done. So empty the glove box, and the first thing that we're going to do is to take this inner part out, and it's flocked, it has this soft material on it, and we need to remove these brackets. That's what we'll start with. There you are, and that allows us to take out these thingies, and we need to pry these covers off. It's so neatly made. There it is. There are some plastic thingies sitting on this corner over here. These ones. So repeat the same on the other side. There you are. And then you can move those hold downs. Now inside here in this flocked part, let me switch the lamp on. Over here on the bottom we have 3 of those clips. They're pretty hard to see because these knobs are flocked also, and there are a couple on top next to this bracket here, and I typically use an Allen key to push in the center part, and they click. Do the same ones on the top. I think it's such a nice detail that the Lexus folks flock these little clips too, just to make them invisible. Or you can pull up on the bottom and get your finger underneath, then you can pop them out. In the corner there, put a lamp on. There's this little thing behind here. Is a connector for the airbag, and this is somewhat of an afterthought because the very first LS's didn't have this. They didn't have a passenger airbag, but put it in a little bit like that, and now we should be able need a little aid on the top here. There we have it, and there's a lamp on the back. There's a connector over here. So that's out, and now we have access to a bolt here and there, and that holds this kick panel. 10mm socket. I'm gonna pull off the lower cover. That's just clipped in place. Not sure if it shows. Yeah, it does. And now I should have access to two more bolts here. One, is there one in the middle? One. No, 2 it appears. Yeah. Need to completely remove this panel, this kick panel below, all the way down. And then, let me see. It should drop out. And it does. And there is our ECU. Now I'm gonna unplug it. There are 3 plugs in this one, and I have repaired and recapped this one, I believe 2 years ago. There are 4 plugs in the back, so there it is. I think I'll leave it on this panel. Saves me a little bit of work, but anyway, this one's out. Now I'm gonna repeat the same on my Project LS 400 and install this, and I'll pick you up from there. So that's one out, and that is 2 out. This is the one of my friend, and I have made a marking on my own. Capacitors replaced September 2023, and this is the model number, and it is, in fact, sorry, I have to have the camera a bit upside down. It's exactly the same. So I'm just gonna plug this in, and then I'll go for a test drive. And unfortunately, I do not have sufficient filming equipment with me, but I'll try to take you along on the ride. Alrighto. It's the first warm and sunny day here. Oh, and I have to get used to the warmth, man. Well, it fires up. Lamps on. Alrighto. See what this brings. Okay folks, we're back at home base. I've done a long test drive, the camera tipped over so I stopped filming. Done a lot of highway driving, but there are minor issues in the idling of the car, and I think it has more to do with how the car adjusts to driving style, fuel and air pressure. They can adapt within a certain range, so apparently my friend's ECU is better adapted to the driving circumstances over here. There are differences. I wouldn't say far from home, but it is different over here. But the problems I had with the hesitation under acceleration and the really hard shocks on highway driving are still there. So it's safe to say the ECU is not at fault. And with this ECU in my friend's car, where it originally belongs in, it doesn't have any problems. And well, anyway, at least it means that the most expensive part, apart from the engine and the transmission, is not at fault, and I have to do some further fault finding, and for that I need more test equipment and the workshop manuals, which I have at home. So I'm gonna round it off over here. I'm gonna put the ECUs back in the cars where they originally came from, then drive home, and I'll pick you up from there, which will be in a couple of days for me, but in the next scene for you. Now I want to further investigate that hesitation under acceleration problem, and I went online and I found this post on the Lexus Owner Club. And long story short, this is something that triggered me. This is someone that describes the exact same problems, and this is a post of September 2010, so it's quite a while ago. And over here it lists, maybe you don't see the mouse pointer, but anyway, all the things that he done, all the same things that I have done, and he describes the fix over here, and it is the engine coolant temperature sensor in the engine bay, and he also points at the location of the sensor. Now that's the next thing I want to investigate, and yeah, it's just tossing a new sensor. Why would that solve the hesitation under acceleration problem? Let's go over to the workshop manual. So here I have both workshop manuals. It's 800 pages in total. This is the part with the electric schematics, and this is the part for the automatic transmission. Let me sit down. Now, all of this is in German. So in that post it describes this sensor over here. You have to know there are two temperature sensors on the engine. One is for the temperature gauge on the instrument cluster, and the other is connected to the ECU that feeds information to the ECU. Now, why would such a sensor cause so much problems? Well, if you have a close-up look over here, you can see there are two throttle position sensors. This is the main throttle position sensor that is on every LS400/Toyota Celsior. And this is the secondary optional throttle position sensor for the traction control, because the traction control has a secondary throttle valve that sits in front of the main throttle valve, and it can shut down the airflow if the traction control is activated. And both throttle valves have their own separate throttle position sensor. Now here comes the thing that's important. You can see that this wire E2 connects to both sensors, and it also goes to the temperature sensor. Now if this sensor is faulty, it's shorted to ground, and that could be the case, it would also disturb the signal coming from the throttle position sensors. And yeah, that may confuse the ECU, so that would explain a lot. And when we go over to the main electric diagram over here, this is the exact same area: main throttle position sensor, traction control sensor. There is our temperature sensor. This is the mass airflow sensor, and there is a variable resistor that's used for adjustment of the mixture. But anyway, you can see it here too. I think this is a power wire, and yeah, if this shorts to ground, it disturbs the signals from both the throttle position sensors but also from the mass airflow sensor. So that post all of a sudden makes a lot of sense. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to order, I hope I can find it, but I will try to order a new sensor and then put it in, and yeah, let's just throw parts at the problem. But upon first investigation, this makes a lot of sense, so let's give this a try. Okay, let's take a dive onto the hood. I removed the spark plug cover on the left hand side, so this gutter with the spark plug leads can get out of the way. And there we have it. Underneath there is the sensor for the ECU, and this is the one that's for the temperature gauge on the instrument cluster. So I hope I can get the connector off and I'll be able to reach it. It's a bit hard, but I do not want to take the entire intake off. That's the only way to get this out of the way. So I hope I can wiggle that sensor down there out. Well, that's the old sensor out, and there we have the new sensor in. So as you can see, I did take the intake off because yeah, you really have to make your life easy. Just take it off and save yourself a lot of hassling and busted knuckles and all. So I'm gonna put everything back together. One thing that I'm going to do is clean those clamps. I have an ultrasonic cleaner nowadays. I'm gonna clean them and then put everything back together. Oh yeah, and I saw one tiny thing. There's some oil residue in here, so I'm gonna check this this seal. It seems to protrude a little bit on the upside, so I'm gonna give this a gentle tap with the hammer. Well folks, I am back from a long test drive. It's a couple of days later, and I arrived at the middle of nowhere, but I don't wear my sunglasses. I won't be looking in the camera all too much. But anyway, there she is, dirty. I went on a really long test drive, and I'm happy to report that yielded some great results, and I can finally wrap up an episode of Project LS 400 once again. Did not solve my complete problem, but let me show you what I've done. So let's hop in the car. So yeah, what I've done basically, I went through the country from north to south and from west to east. Literally, that's something you can do in a day in the Netherlands. Now let's zoom in on the trip computer. So 490 kilometers. I'll blink the miles in screen. As you can see, normally if I would have this mileage on one tank, it would be running on empty. So it seems that the fuel consumption has greatly improved, and also, oh, let me turn the camera around. So it turns out that temperature sensor did cause a problem. The hesitation and back and forth, a little bit light back and forth under acceleration is now completely gone. The car runs smooth and so much better than it did before. So I'm really glad that that 13 euro sensor was the fix to my problem. Only, yeah, it took a while to figure it out, but yeah, thanks with help of internet and internet wisdom and using your brain, you can solve these kinds of problems for cheap. So that's good, and as said, the fuel consumption seems to have greatly improved, and I'm really happy with that, given the fuel prices nowadays. Anyway, that's part one. Part two is that there still is a momentarily freezing of the transmission. I think it's the transmission, whether there is a heavy shock through the car, and that's something that I need to fix. But now that I know that the hesitation and that hard freezing in the acceleration, or that momentarily, very momentarily locking up of the transmission during driving, were two separate problems. So it seems that yeah, it was very hard to distinguish because those two faults, those two malfunctions seem to resonate with each other and maybe amplify each other. I do have the impression that that freezing and shocking in the transmission is now also improved, and I could also tell that the ECU was learning during the first 100 kilometers of driving on this tank of fuel, but I still have that transmission issue to fix, but that's something for a later episode. Now I can say I've done a cross-country drive without too many issues, too many freezing up of the transmission, and fuel consumption has greatly improved, and I'm really happy with that. So anyway, let's get out of the car. I'm really happy that I've been able to fix this for now. I hope it is helpful for you. And for now, well, yeah, I'd like to end this episode of Project LS 400. I hope you liked following me along. And if you did, please let me know, subscribe, give me a like, put on notifications, leave a comment if you have any feedback or questions. I read all the comments, and if you would like to help support the channel, you can do so by buying me a coffee. And for now, thanks for watching. Bye!